Today we're talking about guitar strings. Strings, guitar strings. I just changed some and now I've got this mess to deal with. If you've ever been to a music store, you've seen the wall of guitar strings. That has got to be one of the toughest things to navigate through. So today I'm going to walk through picking out a set of strings. We have to talk about these three things. Gauge, how thick the strings are. Material, what material are the strings made of. Number 3, brand. Of all those kinds out there, which one do I pick? So the first thing I want to talk about is gauge. There's a ton of different gauges you can purchase. The most common would be 9s, 10s, and 11s. All that number means is the thickness of the smallest E string. So when you say 9, you mean 0.009. 10, 0.01. 11, 0.011. If you were to buy a set of 9s, you would get a thin set of strings. Most Fender instruments come with 9s already on them. Probably the most common strings would be 10s, and those are just regular light gauge. You can start getting into thicker strings like 11s and 12s, and they're more suited for jazz players and maybe guys that are doing drop tune heavy rock stuff. If you're new to guitar, it's probably best to stick with a set of 9s because they're going to be easiest to play, but they can come out of tune easier. So if you step up to 10s, you'll notice it's a little bit harder to play, but you'll stay in tune way better. Companies also make hybrid sets. Right here, I have a pair of Arnie Ball skinny top heavy bottom strings. About 2 years ago I played a benefit. Instead of doing worship music, we did a bunch of cover songs. And most of those cover songs were in drop C. When I tuned my regular guitar down to drop C, the strings were basically falling off. Floppy, 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 floppy. So I purchased a couple sets of these because they have the regular thin strings that I like. It also has thicker bottom strings that allow me to drop the tuning and not get floppy strings. So there's some things to think about in gauges. Next, let's talk about material. The material of the string is going to determine if it's bright or warm and how long they'll sound new. The brightest and maybe longest lasting material you can get for strings is stainless steel. Stainless steel is a very hard metal, so it keeps its tone a lot longer than other strings. The problem is, it's such a hard metal that it can wear frets out really easy. So to combat this, companies make nickel wound strings. Nickel is a lot softer than stainless steel and it doesn't cause as much fret wear. But see, using the different types of metals causes the strings to wear out a little bit faster. Now one of the warmer style of strings you can purchase are called pure nickel. Instead of being nickel coated, they're actually pure nickel wrapped. These are what came on Fender instruments back in the 50s and 60s. Stainless steel is probably the brightest, hardest material, where nickel is the warmest, most vintage sound. Lastly, let's talk about brands. There are so many brands on the market. And personally, it doesn't make much difference to me about those brands as it does their packaging. Some companies put their strings in a paper sleeve and put them in a cardboard box. I have never been a fan of that. Where other companies put them in a sealed bag. I like this because it keeps them fresher longer. Nothing can get at the strings. So when you're in the guitar store next, take a peek at all the strings on the wall. Look for what gauge they have, look for the different materials, and look at all the different brands. For myself, I've been through many different types of strings. When I first started buying strings, I used these. These are the cheap $3 or $4 set from the music store. These are just regular gauge 10s, and they're nickel wound. As you can see, they're just in this little plastic baggie, and each string is individually wrapped. I used them for probably about a year, until I found these strings, D'Addario. D'Addario. It doesn't really much matter. Again, these are 10s, regular, and you can see they say nickel wound. One of the things that made the biggest difference was they actually come in this fancy little baggie that's sealed. These strings will last a lot longer than the regular ones. It was about that time that I got my first Telecaster. I had these strings on it, and I was finding that when I put the strings on, they sounded great. After a month, they didn't sound good anymore. Text. So I took my Tele in to get it set up, and I asked the guy, "Hey bro, I got this problem." "What your problem is?" "You see, I've been using these D'Addario strings on my Tele. They're just too bright and they don't last." "So, do you have anything else I could use?" "Yup, That's when I started getting these. These are Ernie Ball pure nickel wrap strings. They made the biggest difference in tone on my guitar. Now these may not be the best for everybody. I know on my Teles and Strat, they work great. So there you have it. When you're picking out strings, make sure to look for gauge, material, brand. Now ask yourself, when was the last time I changed my strings? Well, that's it. Check back tomorrow for day 4 of the 5-day series. Peace out.